Welcome to No Four Studios. Today I have Kat Torre with us and Emma Bernier. And today we're going to discuss quite a few different things. Kat, kick it off.
Thank you. So, yeah, welcome back, guys. We're excited to bring you another episode of the Boost Entrepreneurship series. And we're doing a bit of a different angle here because I think Doug has always gotten a lot of advice about, how to grow your business and how do you grow your mindset and scale and do it sustainably and not hate your life. And I get asked that a lot by clients too. But what I love is that we've got Emma here today as our special guest, and we want to take a different lens to it. And so there's this thing, and brace yourself for it, guys. We're going to actually talk about astrology and through the lens of how to create more awareness and more alignment and more just being like more productive, right? And maintaining your energy. And again, like you're always saying, Doug, getting your mind right, because if you've got your mind right, everything follows.
It's all about the mindset.
Always. And so, Emma, you're a corporate astrologist and so well versed. I'd love for you to just kind of like share a little bit about your background and like let's dive into kind of, what we talked about, like the big three and how we can use that to just create more self-awareness in our day-to-day in our working life.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you both for having me, by the way. So yeah, I am a psychological astrologer. I work with different corporations. Previously have worked with couples, helping them utilize astrology for deeper relationships. I have a background in neuroscience, so I do angle astrology from a more psychological lens. And the benefit of that is that it really helps deepen your awareness and understanding of yourself. And kind of like you both said already a million times, mindset is really important, right? How you relate to yourself, how you perceive yourself and the problems that you're facing is really important. It's probably one of the key elements that can help you prevail or maybe not prevail in a situation. So astrology really, it really helps to build some awareness of your strengths, of your weaknesses, what you bring to the table. So I can just dive into the big three now if that works.
Before we get into the big three, actually, why don't we start with like what most people think of, like when they think of astrology and they think of like, what's your sign? So like, let's talk about that. And then how is that related to the big three? I think that might be helpful for our listeners.
Sure, absolutely. So most people that are familiar with astrology are familiar with the sun sign, which is one of the signs of the big three, if you will. So whenever somebody says, what's your sign? What's your star sign, your zodiac sign? They're always referencing the day of your birthday, the sign that falls the day of your birthday. So for me, I was born at the end of January, which means my sun sign is Aquarius. Now, in the big three, they're supposed to represent the three main parts of your personality per astrology. The sun sign, or most, commonly understood aspect of astrology, is your ego. It's your identity. It's your conscious vitality and how you express yourself. Your moon sign is kind of the counterpart to that. It's the unconscious emotional needs that you have, what you need to feel nurtured, how you nurture others. And then the rising sign represents how you present yourself to the world. It's how you've learned to navigate the world. Some people may consider it more of a social personality. So what is the first impression that you give others? How do you dawn on others? And so sometimes what can happen is the rising sign and the sun sign sound very familiar, right? I'm sorry, they sound very similar. And so the rising sign can sometimes be an image that you project, but then as people get to know you more deeply, they start to see more of your sun sign come through. So those are kind of like the three main parts of, those are the three elements of the big three, with the sun sign again being what most people understand astrology to be. So
It's kind of
what it
crazy
is.
how all this stuff works and comes together. It really is. Like even when we were talking last time on when we had the show, it was great collaborating with Emma and Kat, and we were just like, I couldn't believe, Kat, you obviously know a lot more about this than I do, but it was pretty cool just watching you girls discuss this and that and how this ties into that and how we were all together, and just kind of funny how the universe brings people together, the gravity force that brings people together, It's a bond, sometimes you just feel like you know people forever and like, oh, you're an old soul or whatever. But the reality is we've walked this earth together before side by side. It's just, we just don't remember that person we once were, but a soul, somebody's
the
good.
familiar.
That's,
Yes.
you feel safe, and you feel good about it.
And I love this too, because in my work, like in working with entrepreneurs and building out their branding and their marketing, I think the long held like personality assessments that have been super used, especially in corporate settings or even in therapy settings. Like I love, Emma, that you'd worked with couples on deepening their relationship through this lens. But it's like it's been like the DISC assessment, and it was like the Myers-Briggs assessment and Enneagram, and I'm sorry, not sorry. Those are like just a little boring, just a little
Yeah,
boring. And I
agreed.
feel like astrology is so much fun. And how many times have each of you been told this? Or if, somebody's watching or listening to this, like somebody will say, who's a good friend of yours now, they'll be like, oh man, Emma, when I first met you, I did
Couldn't
not
stand you.
right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's like the rising, but then when you get to know the person, you get to know their personality and their quirks and right, their energy, that's the sun sign. So I love that you said like the rising is more of like the persona, right? The mask, the initial impression, but it's not the full person,
Yes, absolutely. And I think you make such a really good point there, Kat, that I think astrology, one of the benefits of it is that it can help us realize and understand that we are multifaceted individuals. We have different aspects and elements of our personality that are called forth or that come out in different environments or when interacting with different people. And I think there can be this misconception that to be authentic means to only be one way. Right. So only embody, for example, Aquarius traits. And if I'm somehow veering from that I'm out of alignment or that I'm pretending to be somebody that I'm not. Astrology, I think there's like 10 different planets in astrology that all represent a different aspect of the psyche.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you can have all those planets in a totally different sign. Right. And so it really kind of shows you like, wow, I have all of this in my persona and who I am and how I express myself. And it can be very validating because a lot of times when you look at charts, there can be conflicting placements, like say like an air sign and an earth sign, they're not necessarily known to form a positive or harmonious aspect, which means there can be tension between those two placements. So even being able to like share that with somebody and say, oh, I see two aspects of who you are kind of fighting for the chance to be expressed, and you might feel this inner conflict. Even that alone can feel very validating to people. I hear people all the time as couples, but also in corporate settings telling me, oh my gosh, wow, I thought that was like a trait that was harming me, but now that you phrase it this way, I feel like I'm more able to accept this quality about me, and I can figure out how to utilize that to my benefit in my workspace. So I just love what you said. I think that's a really important point to make. Yeah.
And
So
it's
true.
like, it gives you permission, like permission is so important. Like one of the things that I say on my podcast, Not Nice Clever, a lot is like permission granted to do XYZ, to do whatever it is. And, it's true because we're different. We're not different people, but different elements of us are expressed and activated when we're in a group, right? When we're with kindred souls, when we're with strangers. Like Doug, I know like when you and I first met in person, it was at a holiday party at Sirhan in New York. So I knew everybody there. So I was a lot more comfortable than I typically am in public settings. But in public settings, like conference settings, if it's like first day of school vibes at like a new workplace or I will be on mute and I will be watching and like being like, okay, who can I need all of them to speak so I can gather all their information and then I know how to speak. And my rising is that of Scorpio. Literally, so Scorpio is about like the power dynamic, right? And we're very like, we're afraid to be misunderstood, and we don't want to be made a fool of,
Right.
And it's
well,
like,
I remember going to that party, Kat, and I went by myself. So, when I saw you, I was like, thank God, it was so nice to see you, and we got to hang out. But it was just like, I know that feeling. 'Cause I walked in and it was packed, obviously, great party. And I knew nobody, but I knew Kat, of course, and obviously Ryan. But it was great, and it's so true. Like it's funny because you see people in different settings, and then you put people with other people, and the energy changes so much. Like I feed off people, so like the hardest part about especially mindset, when you're helping entrepreneurs, is when you do a company call and no one's on camera, they just have like their picture up. It's so hard to talk to a picture. Like you need interaction. I feed off of facial expressions and yes and no's, and if it's a no, I want to rebuttal it. Right? That's a salesperson. I want to know. I want to see how it can turn into a yes. So like it's it's mindset, and everything we do, but the energy of people. And I think that's so important. What we talk about in the Boost Mindset series of, with entrepreneurship is that it's really important that you get feedback, right? And you give feedback, because no one can improve or go forward unless they know what they're doing right or wrong, or perceived right or wrong. And the people you collaborate with, the energy changes so much. And we talked about that on the last time we were discussing everything, is that, you're with certain people and they bring out the best of you. They bring out the very best in you. And you're with other people and they bring out not the best of you. And there's those great friends that you party with that you want the worst to come out of you and have a great night.
Just for that night.
Just for that night. That's it. Before there was cell phones, you woke up, you didn't remember what you did. Now everyone shows you what you did. A little different in the last 20 years, but it's so important. Energy is everything. Like the people we're with, who we associate with. Like we said, we like to tell everyone we love them, we care, we hug goodbye, because tomorrow's never promised. But the energy of people is so real, and understanding that, getting it in your mindset that there's a real connection with people, there's a real bond, and it's more than just a social bond. It's just a feeling of wellness when you're around certain people. I believe in everything you and Emma are teaching me about this. I'm fascinated by it. When Emma and I started speaking, I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. This is really, it's spot on, which is the scary part. When she says
it, right?
Like, wow, this is really good. Like, I should be paying you right now for this information. But it helps you though, because when you start understanding yourself better, then you can understand, okay, this is why I am the way I am, and this is the type of person I need to get to, and this is how I'll get there. And it's kind of like gives you like a little inner strength, right? It gives you like a little bit more like confidence, because you kind of understand your thoughts a little bit better, I think. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, so Emma, let's talk through, like we talked a little bit about what the big three is. I have some follow-up questions, but can you share with everybody listening and watching, how can they figure out theirs if they're curious to know? What's the process? Is there a website? What's the information they need to know to figure this out for themselves?
Absolutely. Great question. So it's pretty simple to actually find out what your big three are, or actually your entire chart, to be honest. What you're going to want to do is find 3 pieces of information. It's going to be your date of birth. That includes the year that you were born, your time of birth, including AM or PM. The time is going to be really important as well, everyone. So make sure that you have the accurate time. And then the place or location. Generally, it's the city that you were born in. You might have to get specific. So those 3 things are what you need to find your chart. And you can go online. There are tons of natal chart calculators out there. So you can type in natal chart calculator. If not, there is a site called astro.com and then astrocharts.com, which I think are pretty popular ones, easy to read as well. And you just go, you input your information, and it will generate the chart for you. So that is how you find what your big three are.
And a caveat, guys, we love moms. All right. We love your mama, but like also trust but verify when your mom says you were born to what the birth certificate says, because we did this with Will, my husband, and his mom swears, he was born 10:30 a.m. And then we did his chart, and Emma, I'm sure eventually you meet Will. It said, Doug, that Will was Virgo rising. And I look at him and his daughter, and I look at each other. We're like, he's not a Virgo rising. Are you kidding me? He finds his birth certificate. It was 10:30 p.m. Turns out he's Aries rising, which makes so much more sense, right?
That's
he is
so
the
trailblazer
warrior. Like, Godspeed to anybody who gets in his way,
You're not kidding. Well, I will tell you something funny though. I have a friend whose father, very Italian family, and Italian moms kind of make up their own world, and
they do.
And
they do.
She changed his birth date, and he didn't find out till many, many years later. So they wished him happy birthday and all the wrong dates because she didn't like the day that he was born on. So yeah, this stuff really happens out there. Like, it's crazy, hysterical. But can you imagine finding out your birthday's not your birthday because mom didn't like that day? Can you imagine that? Like, you just, until you're old enough to get a license, you really don't need your birth certificate, right? So if you have an Italian mom out there, you might want to double check. You never know. Classic.
So once you found out your big three, we've talked about like the rising and how it's like your first impression. I feel like whenever I explain it to people, that's pretty easily understood, and everybody knows about the sun sign, most notably, right? Especially a lot, I think, during COVID and post-COVID, like there was a lot more intention and awareness around personal development and mindset and taking care of yourself. But talk to us about the moon sign and how that plays at work, like in your work setting, your professional setting, and then also your personal. But I'm curious, like, with the emotional self, the unconscious? Like, how can people make the best of it in like workplace situations?
Yeah. So the moon, like you so eloquently pointed out, it is the unconscious. It's our emotional needs. It's what we need to feel nurtured, how we nurture others. And obviously in the workplace and in your personal life, like emotions can, it's important to, I think, acknowledge them, but they can sometimes, I think, get in the way if, you know, you're not able to really understand the capacity of your emotional reactions or why you are experiencing the feelings that you're experiencing. So one of the biggest things that the moon sign can show you is some of your unconscious patterns. Now, this is really important because a lot of times, right, like we can be behaving or acting a certain way in the workplace that we don't realize is creating some type of tension. Or on the opposite end of the spectrum, maybe it's something that's actually quite encouraging and it's
Right.
inspiring and motivating other people to really bring their best, right?
Right.
Makes them feel safe and feel comfortable. So I'll just give an example really quick, right? So I have a moon in Sagittarius, and moon in Sagittarius is somebody who they place an emphasis on like morals and ethics, especially anywhere, but in the workplace, if we're talking about the workplace, right? They like this a sense of freedom and adventure and to travel and move around and learn a ton of things. If there's a diverse culture, even better. I'm really locked in. I love to learn all that different stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, but in the workplace, right, Sagittarius is also a fire sign. And because they rule the house of morals and ethics, belief systems, a shadow, if you will, an unconscious shadow and pattern of Sagittarius can be somebody who has a bit of a superiority thing or this feeling of self-righteousness or
Like
just
a
righteousness in
know-it-all.
general. Yes, very know-it-all, very, you know, I know better than you do, or like your opinion is inferior, or more so, sometimes it's just about needing to be right all the time or needing to be perceived as right and struggling to agree to disagree. I think one of the highest embodiments of a moon in Sagittarius is someone who can agree to disagree and allows for there to be multiple opinions and to learn from that instead of playing, you know, judge, jury, and executioner over what is right and what is wrong, you know?
Right. Of course. Exactly.
So, yeah.
It's
So you can. Sorry, I can't tell if you're talking.
no. I was just agreeing with you. I'm like, yeah, spot on.
Yeah. So I think, the point there that I'm trying to make is that it can shed some light on the unconscious patterns that you might have, including the shadow aspects, which are the more like negative or disempowering aspects of your sign. By that same token, moon in Sagittarius is somebody who can be an eternal optimist. They are the everlasting student, everlasting teacher. They love to inspire others and get others to see the world through a lens of, I guess you could say, glass half full or glass refillable, if you will. I know that's a new one. And so that can be really great in tons of work environments, you know, and a lot of times I think in any work environment, you go through highs and lows, whether it's due to the market or due to your team's ability to collaborate, your own personal issues. And so to have somebody who is there to remind you, hey, you know, we have this, guys, we got this, we can do this. This is what we need to do. Let's stay focused. Everyone's doing a great job. And sometimes it, you know, it doesn't have to be so motivational, but, you know, you can see how there's a lot of positives as well to being able to harness the natural ability that you have to nurture others. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely.
Was like cracking up because my husband's moon is in Sagittarius and he's an executive chef. He's a leader. He's a mentor. He's the eternal optimist. Sometimes he does struggle to agree to disagree. Whereas I'll often say that. I'll be like, let's just agree to disagree. He's like, but really, I'm right. I'm like, hon, does it really fucking matter?
Right.
It makes him such a good teacher and it makes him such a good coach and such a good leader in the kitchen. Like at the any restaurant he's ever been at, people, the moment he walks in the door, it's always like, oh, dad's here. He can fix the problems.
Game
like, let's
on,
bring
right?
our
Game on.
They just flock to him for that. So like, as you were describing it, oh, it's just so, it's so funny. And maybe for people listening, you know, they'll be like, if you have that one coworker or that one peer, that one colleague that does something that just like irks you, maybe like get curious about what their moon sign is and what yours is, because maybe you guys are just rubbing each other the wrong way and you just need some more awareness about how to be more supportive with one another, because everybody has different needs.
Especially in the workplace, right? Support is so important, right? Yeah, you look, they call it your work wife, you know, the work people you're with is like your new family, right? I mean, you're with these people all day and it's so important to get along because honestly, you know, you spend more time with people you work with sometimes than your own family, unfortunately. You know, to provide for them, you don't want to be banging horns, all day long at work with somebody. You want to just get along because that causes stress and it's not productive. And then you're not really be able to focus. So I agree with you, Kat. It's important to like figure these things out, find the energy, figure it out.
Yeah. So
Yes.
Emma, with the big three, right? So we talked about the rising and your first impression, right? What first day of work, attending a conference, right? Attending an event or a meeting, and then like the sun sign being your personality, the day-to-day working, right? And then the moon sign being, how you need to be nurtured at work, because people still need that, right? Like to Doug's point, we spend more time with our colleagues and our coworkers sometimes than our own loved ones.
Right.
What if you could give like a fun tip for like each of those three things, like something that somebody could do, like if they figured out, they go to astro.com or astrocharts.com, they know their rising, their sun, and their moon. What's one thing for each of those placements that somebody could do that would be really helpful, like at their when they go back to work or even when they're home alone? Like what would that be from your expertise?
Yeah, so hopefully this answers the question correctly. But I think actually one tip that I would say is really important for all three of those placements is to look into and understand both the disempowered and empowered expression of all three of those placements. Because at the end of the day, astrology has that, right? Where you read about certain signs and you'll read certain qualities and you're like, oh, that's negative. I can't do that. I don't want to be that person, right? But you only are aware of it now because you read it looking back at yourself, So I think that that's one thing that I would say is just like really, really critical to understand, because sometimes you can have multiple, maybe you have, the positive aspects of your sun sign coming out, but then every once in a while, the more negative or disempowering aspects of your rising sign are coming out kind of out of nowhere. And it can throw other people for a loop, but also yourself when you start to get a mixed response from it, or, something ends up happening because of it. So I would say that that's one thing that might be really important for people to understand. I'm trying to think if I broke it down into like an individual tip. I think I'm trying to think here. The rising sign, one of the things that I had mentioned is that it represents, that first impression that you give to people, but it's also how you navigate the world. And so kind of the way that I think about this is if the sun sign represents your expression and the moon sign is what you need to feel nurtured, which by the way, for anybody listening, motivation, a lot of times it can be broken into intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. The internal motivation that you have versus the external thing. Maybe it's like a money or a status change or title. Internal can a lot of times be driven by your emotions, which is why the moon is so important. A lot of times we are motivated and driven by our moon sign, but we might not be conscious of that, right? So understanding that if the sun sign is the expression and the moon sign is this unconscious emotional driver, the rising sign can represent the vehicle through which you express both of those things. So understanding the rising sign might look like looking at the traits of your rising sign and thinking to yourself, this is how I have learned to approach the world. This is how I can use this to my benefit. So if you don't mind me using you as an example, Kat.
No, go right ahead.
Perfect. I know that you just said that you're a Scorpio rising, and the way that you just described everything with you being at a party is like so spot on to Scorpio. Like you said, you're more observant. You like to take everything in. You're not necessarily going out there, getting in everyone's face. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course, but Scorpio is the archetype of the investigator. It likes to probe at things. It likes to take in information because it likes to feel like it is in control, whether of itself, of a dynamic, whatever. It likes to have the power. It likes to feel like it's in control. And so in, say, the workplace, it would be really helpful to utilize that skill set to your advantage. So you're a Gemini, I know. So, okay, if that's the way that you express yourself and you have a knack for communication, or that's part of the primary way that you share the messages that you're looking to share, you can do it in a way that also incorporates that element of Scorpio. Scorpio also rules intuition and instinct. So using your instincts before you go to say something, right? Or really assessing the environment that you're in before you go to speak. And this applies to anybody, by the way, right? Like it would be the worst thing ever to be on a call with a ton of important people, right? And
just like blurt.
Yes, exactly. You're not like reading the room, as they say, which could have some negative ramifications, right? That's just an example, of course. But yeah, I think understanding the rising sign as a vehicle is important. Understanding the unconscious nature of the moon sign is important. And then I actually think understanding the positive embodiment of your sun sign can be very, very helpful because it is a natural expression of who you are. Being able to really let that strength shine will will magnetize things to you. It's like the sun. The sun shines so bright and people gravitate towards warmth. It's like a campfire. It's warm, it's generous, it's comfortable. People want to be near it. That is the power of the sun sign. Yeah.
Wow, that was beautiful. That was great.
Beautifully said.
Thanks.
Mini masterclass, y'all. You're welcome. Right there.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Emma, I would love for anybody listening to Boost here and enjoying, kind of just the tip of the iceberg of what you've shared here today. Like, where can people find you? Where can they hang out with you online, get to know more, educate themselves? What's the best place?
Yes. So right now, you can find me on Instagram. I also have a website. It's at Ebb and Flow Dynamics. Maybe we can drop it like in the description or something so people can find it.
Yeah.
So you can find me there on Instagram. I also have a website, ebbandflowdynamics.com. It'll tell you a little bit more about my services and about me and how I got to where I am. And yeah, other things coming soon. But for now, that's probably where you'll find me.
Oh,